Star Wars is an epic LEGO theme that has been around for over 20 years, providing fans with some of the best sets of all time, but there's still a ton of scenes that LEGO has never made. So in this video, I challenged myself to make the sets that LEGO never did. Our first scene comes to us from Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, which in spite of its flaws, has some of the coolest locations in Star Wars. For this video, I chose Theed, which is the capital city of Naboo, where a lot of the action takes place through the first part of the movie. The scene I made is the one where Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and Jar Jar Binks save the Queen as she's being escorted by the droids. Besides Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Jar Jar, I had to make some custom minifigures. I made the Queen in her black outfit. LEGO has never released that figure before, that's why she's using that Egyptian pharaoh headpiece and the French lady's face. As a bonus fact, LEGO rarely makes Padme or Queen Amidala minifigures. This is the only Queen minifigure, and it sells for at least $100, even in terrible and cracked condition. The cheapest on Bricklink in good shape is $200. It's a great figure, but that price is just insane. Our next minifigure is Captain Panaka, who I made using pieces from this Naboo Flash Speeder set. He's basically the Queen's main bodyguard. This is C.O. Bibble, who's never been officially released by LEGO, but he's really not that important and is basically just known for this line that became a meme.
Invasion.
I also made some Naboo guards to protect Padme, even though they're doing a horrible job since she's literally kidnapped. And for our final minifigure, I made Padme disguised as a handmaiden. This figure doesn't look that good in my opinion. Even though that space helmet is the right shape, I just can't stop seeing it as a space helmet. For the build itself, I made the streets along with multiple different portions of the buildings, all of which have that fancy look that we see in the movies. I also really like how these sand roofs turned out as well. Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and Jar Jar can stealthily move down the hallway above the streets and then drop down once the Queen passes.
Uh-oh.
Other details I liked adding are these plants that help give some life to the build, and I also added some interior space to some of the buildings, like these two rooms, and also the other hallway. When I was growing up, Battlefront 1 and 2 on the PlayStation 2 were some of my all-time favorite games, and Theed was one of the maps, so instead of just using this build for scenes from Episode 1, you can also set it up with clones and droids to reenact battles from the game, with lots of different elevations and places for cover. Let me know your favorite Battlefront map in the comments below. Mine were Mos Eisley, where all the heroes could battle. Our next set for today's video is the Jedi Council itself. Out of all of the builds, this is one that I'm most surprised about that LEGO has never made. Everyone loves Jedi minifigures, and it's an essential location in every prequel movie. The council itself is really round, so I first tried using these wedge plates to make a really circular build, but this one was way too big, and this one was too small, so I ditched the idea and restarted with a simpler technique. I set up the dark red circle in the center and used rounded plates on the edges. Next, I added in these plants for the floor's detail, along with these windows. The council has a ton of different chair designs, so those were the next things that I made. This one is specifically for Yoda, and I like how this one has these bars behind it. At the back of the council, I added in these pillars too. And to enter, I made these sliding doors that use stud shooter pieces for detail. But we also have the minifigures themselves. The Jedi Council changes a ton over the movies, with a ton of different characters and species. Unfortunately, my council only fits 9 seats instead of 12, so I picked the ones that I thought would be fan favorites. I went with Yoda, Mace Windu, Plo Koon, Obi-Wan and Anakin, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Kit Fisto, Agent Kolar, and Saesee Tiin. LEGO also made some other council members like Eth Koth, Stas Ali, and Evan PL, so those would work too. And if you want to take things to the dark side, you can also set up the scene with the younglings. Master Skywalker, what are we going to do? For an additional side build, I also made this bookshelf for the Jedi Council library, and come to think of it, I bet they aren't even actually called bookshelves, but that's basically what they are, except with holograms. And I also built this bust representing one of the lost 20 Jedi Masters who left the Jedi Order like Count Dooku. For the minifigure, I included Jocasta Nu, the librarian. That's another minifigure that LEGO has never released. Rey's torso with tan arms works pretty well for her, and this is a set that I could see LEGO releasing as a May the 4th promotion like the Lars Homestead. Now back in my day, Jocasta Nu died in the Jedi Temple in the Revenge of the Sith video game, but I guess that's not even canon anymore, so that's fine. And for a deep cut, I also made Sindralig, a Jedi Master barely seen in the hologram Obi-Wan finds in the film. He was also featured in the PS2 game and an episode of the Clone Wars. He was one of the fastest Jedi Masters, but was killed by Anakin during Order 66. The next build is Felucia, a planet featured in the Clone Wars and in Episode 3. It's recognized for all of its crazy plant life. On the one hand, it looks really cool and pretty, but at the same time, it's muddy and kind of gross. So I started with this base to get that look, and then began making the plants that we see. I made this giant flower that looks like it could eat you. along with this smaller one, some bushes, and this one that uses clear minifigure heads and minifigure stands to give it the windy look. For minifigures, I included these clone troopers along with Ayla Secura, whose death during Order 66 is the most famous scene on the planet. LEGO hasn't made these specific clone troopers, so I'm using the Utapau ones. The Old Republic troopers' dark orange stripes work well too, so this build is just big enough for the clone troopers to surround the Jedi and blast her. Like, LEGO would probably never release a scene like this since it's based around a character's death, and they've basically avoided everything having to do with Order 66 anyway. However, it's still a pretty cool location. I also built this custom Acklay, which is most well known for its appearance in the Geonosis Arena in Attack of the Clones. However, there was a mission in Battlefront 2 where the clones had to kill Acklay on Felucia, so I recreated that here. This build is highly inspired by Hachiroku 24's, which I'll link in the description, but I did have to end up customizing it quite a bit. All of its legs are posable, and it's right at minifigure scale. I also like the use of that gear for its teeth, which is a genius building technique that I'd never be able to come up with on my own. I still have no idea why LEGO has refused to release a Geonosis Arena. It's definitely in my top 5 most wanted LEGO Star Wars sets. This is my version of the infamous hallway scene from Rogue One. In the movie, all the rebels have that same rebel helmet, but I only had 2, so I had to mix in some other rebels as well. The build can be closed up as one section of hallway or swung open for display to make the hallway look even longer. The hallway walls in the movie are slanted, so I use these hinge pieces to replicate that along with the red stripe. I also made some doors with control panels, since a big part of the scene is the rebels trying to pass off the plans through the doors as Darth Vader wrecks all of them. This is another scene that I'm a bit surprised LEGO has never released, but perhaps they think it's too violent. They released Luke's hallway scene, but maybe they saw that as okay since it just involved killing droids and not a bunch of good guys. For today's last build, I've made the battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin and Count Dooku aboard the Invisible Hand at the start of episode 3. So for the minifigures, we need all 3 of them, as well as Chancellor Palpatine. I'm using this version from the Droid Tri-Fighter, but this lighter hairpiece is a bit more accurate. Today, both Palpatine minifigures are quite expensive, selling for around $40 and $60. I also included this super battle droid to accompany Count Dooku. The build stretches across one full base plate and one half base plate. The half includes the sliding doors of the elevator, as well as the balcony area where some of the fighting takes place. I made the staircases angled by using these plate pieces and added in these clear yellow pieces for the lights on them. On the larger base plate, the first thing I built was the chair where Chancellor Palpatine is held. It's very reminiscent of his Emperor throne, and it can also spin. His entire area is raised and has a backdrop of windows along with these poles that have these red lights. I also made these droid control stations. I got that round shape by using these pieces, and there's also this computer table in the center as well. There's plenty of room to recreate most of the scene that we see in the movies. Do it. And really, now that I'm reflecting on it, I'm wondering if LEGO is just trying to avoid the most violent aspects of Star Wars movies, because I'm definitely starting to see a pattern. Anyways, let me know down in the comments other Star Wars scenes you'd like to see that LEGO has never released, and we'll see about making an episode 2. Until then, you can watch this video where I turned Star Wars characters into medieval castle variants. And until next time, see you later.